We're trying to find the best players to represent the Canadian national team for a massive moment for a home World Cup. We know that we have to continue to broaden our player pool. We are constantly tracking our players, watching them, challenging them. They all know that it's not just 11 players that are going to help us be successful in 2026, but the entire squad.
Canada's history-making moment delivered by their biggest superstar. Magic from David, absolute magic. That's what he's capable of. O'Shea finds the back of the net.
Promise fulfilled. What a day at the park it's been for the Canadian winger.
We are on the road to the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and today we welcome you to a brand new series across TSN's platforms, Race for the Roster. Hi everybody, I'm Luke Wildman alongside Stephen Caldwell, and each week Stevie will be looking at the form of the Canadian players around the world as he tries to get inside the mind of Canada's head coach Jesse Marsch. He has to not only pick the 26-player squad that Jesse Marsch will name for the World Cup, but also predict the starting 11 for Canada's first World Cup game. Not an easy task, to be fair.
Not an easy task. This is just silly, Luke. I think you thought this up because you're looking forward to laughing at me when I get this wrong, because this is almost impossible. But I'll give it a go. You know me, I'm up for trying.
I'm looking forward to the opening game of the World Cup next year, where we put the decisions up from today and see just how wrong you were. But these are the guidelines that we are going by. We're projecting a 26-player squad. It was a 26-player squad in Qatar. Before that, 23. But with the expanded World Cup, we're expecting FIFA will make an announcement that it will be a 26-player squad. Of course, 3 goalkeepers within that. Stevie will be tracking players' form weekly, and we'll have updates every Monday across all of TSN's platforms. He couldn't do this on his own. He needed a little bit of help, so he did sit down with Jesse Marsch ahead of making his first predictions.
Jesse, they've gave me the absolutely, utterly ridiculous task of getting inside your head.
Good luck.
Good luck. It's not going to be easy. So give me an idea. Help me here. Help me, please, with this task. What are you looking at when it comes to the wider squad of people? How many players are we looking at here?
Yeah, I think we have chosen to do it kind of in tiers. So we have like 3 tiers of players, and it probably amounts to about 63 players, I think. You know, and tier 1 guys are kind of guys that we can know are gonna, if they're healthy and everything's in order, that they're coming into the camp. Tier 2 are guys that we're always considering about positional needs and how they might be able to complement. And then tier 3 are guys that are a little bit more on the periphery, but still have potential to emerge, right? So, and then we're changing it monthly. You know, almost weekly, based on performance with clubs, based on performance when they come in. And we're trying to figure out then how to basically make in white, which is our top tier, 26 names that we can absolutely feel like we can count on.
It's the brace for Jonathan David.
You've got Jonathan David, who everyone expects if he's fit, he's going to start. Is there a real battle to choose his partner? And then even when you look at 4 or 5 strikers, 6 strikers, there's guys in form in Europe and in MLS that are trying to get a very coveted spot.
It's funny, I've talked to a lot of other national team coaches, and a lot of them say there are no number 9s. We have like 15 of them. Really. Okay. And I think in Canada, the coaches, when they're young, they just put their best player up at center striker and they say go. And like, look, I mean, now you look at the different types of strikers we have, the different qualities we have, the strikers that have been hot, playing at high levels. It's competitive. It's probably our number 1 most competitive position.
Wasn't much help, was he? He's a little tight-lipped for me, but trying to get insight out of Jesse Marsh was not an easy thing. He's not going to name any names, but you can see how difficult a task this is with the depth that's starting to appear with the Canadian men's national team.
OK, we get it. It's difficult. Stevie is going to
Keep
upset.
saying it, don't I?
He's going to upset some people along the way. He might make a few mistakes, some decisions that many people will disagree with. But let's get to it, and we'll start with the starting strikers here as we look at who you think will be in the squad next year as the starting centre forwards.
Jonathan David! What a strike! A fabulous finish from Jonathan David!
Magic from David, absolute magic. That's what he's capable of, that kind of quality in the box.
Lauren! Who else? What a big goal that is! Lauren, he scored again!
Lauren just lethal and now legendary.
OK, so here we go. You've got Kyle Larin and Jonathan David as your starting strikers, the first players projected into the starting 11. Of course, Jonathan David, Canada's all-time leading scorer. Not much of a surprise about that one. Let's take a look at the bench. These are the players that Stevie thinks will be strikers who are in the squad. Promise David and Daniel Jebison, two relatively recent additions to Jesse Marsh's squad, and Tani Oluwaseyi as well. Are you locking anybody into the starting 11 right now? Are you saying right now, today, 1 year out, that any of these players will be in this starting 11 for the opening game?
Yeah, I mean, no real surprise. I'm saying that Jonathan David is absolutely a lock. Look, he is a man in form, a man at the highest levels of the game, and so I'm locking him in. If he's fit, definitely starting for Canada.
OK, maybe a bit more of a question mark around Kyle Larin. You have him in the starting 11 right now. Didn't have a bad season playing in Spain, but hasn't had the best form in terms of his goal-scoring return for Canada. Just 1 goal in his last 16 games. How much do you think his position is in danger over the course of the next few months?
A good question. I think it is in jeopardy. There's no doubt that they're going to be looking at Promise David, Daniel Jebison, Tani Oluwaseyi, maybe some others will come into that. But I think when I look at these 5, absolutely, for me, they're right at the leaderboard. Larin, I think, tried and tested and trusted by Jesse Marsh. That's why I've went for him. He's still playing at an extremely high level, Luke. When we look at the other strikers, Jebison, a young man, he's in the Premier League, but very limited minutes. Promise Davis did well in Belgium, maybe looking for a move, and Tani Oluwaseyi in MLS also maybe looking for a move. When I see Larin's level in La Liga for Mallorca, I give that the edge and that experience and the ability and the way that these two guys have played with each other for such a long time. I've got him in the starting lineup.
You talk about experience, and of course, both Kyle Larin and Jonathan David have played at a World Cup before. How much do you think that comes into it? Not only on this, but when Jesse Marsh is looking at who to pick here.
I think it's important because I think as a coach, when you're heading into that first game, you want to play players that have been there and done it, that you know can handle the situation. That's unfortunate for anybody inexperienced, but understanding and knowing somebody that's been there before is vital. You know that they can cope with what's going to come their way. So, you know, when I look at everything like that and the experience of Larin, the places that he's played in his career, I just think, and again, that partnership with David, they've got a decent partnership. I think that he's going to be the starter. Now, we don't know who the game's going to be, and we know, as Jesse just said, that these players have different profiles, which I think is huge for Canada. The fact that, depending on an opponent, might mean that Promise David's profile, or Tani Oluwaseyi, or Daniel Jebison's profile is preferred to Larin's.
So you're already making excuses after just the first 2 names. It might depend on the opponent as to whether or not you've got this one right.
I mean, they're different characters, they're different players. So, but I'm still saying Larin. I'm confident in Larin. I've seen him enough to think that he's going to partner David.
We are going to fill out the rest of this squad over the course of the next few minutes, and as we continue, maybe something of a surprise in Stevie's midfield choices. That's next. Welcome back to Race for the Roster as we continue to build up towards the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and Stevie has already picked his strikers for Jesse Marsh's squad. So now let's get on to the midfielders, and we'll start with the players that he thinks will be in the starting 11 for the opening game.
Eustachio!
Tremendous football from Stefan Eustachio. That is magnificent stuff.
And then the spectacular effort for Canada from Ismail Kone. A star for the future, a star for right now.
It's Buchanan with
The tremendous wing work. His confidence is sky high this afternoon, Tajon Buchanan.
What a day at the park for the Canadian winger.
Alfonso Davies! Canada's history-making moment, delivered by their biggest superstar.
So Stevie goes in the centre of midfield with Ismail Kone and Stefan Eustáquio, and then in the wide positions on the right, Tajon Buchanan, who got that horrible injury at Copa America last year, but put in maybe his best ever display for Canada in the Canadian Shield, and it was great to see him return. And then Alfonso Davies on the left side of midfield. We'll get to that more in just a moment, but let's take a look at the subs first. Here are the other midfielders that you've got named in the squad. Jacob Schaffelberg, who had a good Copa America. Liam Miller, who's coming off an injury. You've got Saliba, Chouanier, Osorio, the Toronto FC captain, and Ali Ahmed of the Vancouver Whitecaps. Are there any midfielders you are locking in? And by locking in, a reminder that this means that they will be starting the opening game of the World Cup. You are locking in these players to the 11.
Yeah, I'm going to lock in central midfield Stefan Eustáquio. Of course, he's been consistent, and Alfonso Davies is absolutely going to start and captain this team next summer.
OK, but where he starts is something that has been a question over the course of the last couple of years. How do you get the best out of Alfonso Davies? It's something we've talked about for a long time. Does he play at left back? Do you play him further forward? You have him starting the World Cup on the left side of midfield. How and why?
Well, I think it frees him up. I think it gives him the licence to be even higher and to go and attack even more, and even come off that left-hand side at times and come a little bit central, be that pace maybe through the middle as David drops and Larin starting is maybe not going to give you that in-behind aspect. So Davis does. And I think it takes away some defensive responsibility from him. And seeing him, I think, freer and a bit more relaxed and a bit more open to taking people on in attack might bring out the best of him. A lot of people criticise Alfonso Davies for not being Bayern Alfonso Davies with Canada. It's sometimes harsh, but I think maybe playing him higher up might be what he needs.
That might mean, though, that Jacob Schaffelberg isn't in.
Yeah, and it's a little harsh, but I think Schaffelberg might be effective from the bench. I look at the balance of these substitute midfielders, what they might provide. And Schaffelberg is someone for me who can be more effective when people are tired, very direct, so pacey. I think of him as a substitute.
Let's look at Ismail Kone then in the centre of midfield. It hasn't been the easiest of situations for him at club level. He's made a couple of changes in the last couple of years since making that move from Montreal. Should he be looking over his shoulder at all in terms of the other players that could take his position? And if his form isn't great for a club this year, could he be in a position where he isn't in the 11?
Yeah, I think he needs consistency at club level. I think he needs matches. He needs to, get that routine, that consistency in his game, because at times it can be off and on. And in a World Cup game, you need someone who is solid and ready and in the best match fitness that he can be. So there is a concern. At his best, there's no doubt for me that he's in this team, but he's not been at his best for a little while. Got to sort out the club form. I look at the guy below him in Saliba, who is playing in MLS, but rumoured to be going to Europe.
And you like him?
I really like him. I've liked him for the longest time since we first saw him, but I think there's a maturity in his game. I think there's more discipline to his game alongside Eustáquio. If he gets that move and he can play at a higher level, he's really going to push Kone close.
And just briefly, Tajon Buchanan, how close is he to being a lock? Or do you need to wait and see what happens at club level?
Again, I'll say it, his best look, he's sensational. We saw that against Ukraine, but there's too much going on at club level, too much with injuries, too much with lacking minutes. So I look at him here and I think as long as he's playing well at club, he's going to be a lot, because Canada don't have anybody like him. These other names underneath him are not as effective as Tajon Buchanan at his best.
Next up then, Stevie's picks for the starting back line.
Fabulous defending. Thought he was beating all ends up. Just a sublimely timed challenge. Look at that.
Here is Larea. Richie Larea! Canada's electric fullback, Alistair Johnston! Smile on his face tells it all, doesn't it?
What a challenge that was from Derek Cornelius.
So no surprise that Alistair Johnston gets the call at right back after another great season with Celtic and the influence that he brings from those full-back positions for Jesse Marsch's side. Moise Bombito continues to rise in terms of his stock and his play both for club and country. He's got, alongside Derek Cornelius, the central defensive pairing, something that you would probably have expected, but maybe a surprise In the left-back position with Richie Larea named in the 11 and Alphonso Davies, as we talked about, moved a little further forward. We'll get onto that, but let's take a look at the other defenders that you have in the squad. Nico Segur, you've got Sam Adekubi of the Whitecaps, Knight Labelle, who is probably going to try and play a little bit higher up than League Two in England, that is where he was last year. And then Luc de Fougerolles as well is an option, and he looked really good over the course of the games in the Canadian Shield. Who are you locking in here at the back?
I'm going to lock in Alistair Johnston at the back for sure. I think his club form and his international form, and Moise Bombito, who's just been a revelation since he's came into that back line. He's absolutely transformed the whole back line because of his athleticism and his quality on the ball.
And of course, Cornelius can't be a lock right now because Stevie is the president of the Luc de Fougerolles fan club. And I wouldn't be surprised if you put the pressure on Stevie right now, he'd put a little bit of money on de Fougerolles starting the World Cup.
A little early, maybe a little early for that. We'll see how he goes and if he gets a loan move.
OK, the big one here is Richie Larea.
Yeah.
So often a right back, but he can play on the left side as well. Has done for club, has done for country. He's played at a World Cup before. In fact, 3 of these back 4 have been in a World Cup squad. Moise Bombito, the only one that wasn't on the squad for Qatar. You talked about why you want Davies further forward. Why is Richie Larea playing at left back?
Well, I think Richie Larea matches Davies' athleticism. I don't know if he's as quick, but he's very quick. You don't see him beaten very often. It allows that back line still to be high and play the style that Jesse Marsh wants. And I think you always want your best players in the team when you're going into the first game of World Cup. And Larea, for me, is probably the 12th man of this 11. And so there's a way like getting him in, then you try and make that work. Now, he's played in higher positions for Jesse Marsh in Canada. Is there a swap there between Davies and Larea? Potentially, but I just think what he brings, his ability to draw fouls, draw penalty kicks, his experience, he's been consistent at the MLS level, had a spell in Europe, of course, with Nottingham Forest. I think Jesse Marsh is going to want to get him in there, and I talked about what that does for Alphonso Davies. So, it was a real battle between Johnston and Larea recently for this right-back slot because Johnston's done so well. He's secured it, so getting Larea in somewhere else is important for Jesse.
You lock in Johnston and you lock in Bombito. You've already said maybe it's too early to be talking about de Fougerolles starting in a World Cup game. It's certainly too early for Knight Labelle to be starting a World Cup game. So why is Cornelius not a lock right now?
He's very close to it, Luke. I think he's done well getting his big move to Marseille. He's done absolutely fantastic for Canada. And this is becoming a real partnership, Bombito and Cornelius. And so I'm tempted, but I'm not quite there. I'm not quite fully there saying that Derek Cornelius is locked in. I think his club form has been patchy. He's had some average games. So I think, again, he's got to push on again to the next level in his club football, and he will become a lock. So he's probably the closest out of these locks of being the kind of the next one in there. Playing great and bringing a lot. Did really well in the Canadian Shield games, sort of leading that line. But he's one that, I've not quite got there yet.
And just a reminder, these are locks to start the opening game of the World Cup. Not just locks to make the squad, but to be in Jesse Marsh's 11 for that first game of the 2026 World Cup. But who will be in goal? Well, Stevie will tell you who he thinks next. Welcome back to TSN's new series, Race for the Roster, on the road to the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Now, maybe the biggest decision Jesse Marsh has to make over the course of the next 12 months, heading into the opening game of the World Cup, is who will be his starting goalkeeper, Dane St. Clair or Maxime Crépeau?
We have 2 magnificent goalkeepers in Dane St. Clair and Maxime Crépeau. We're excited about the challenge that they will provide to each other to be number 1. And it'll be really important that we find also the number 3 goalkeeper to complement those 2.
Well, here's a first look at our form tracker, and we will be keeping a close eye on all of the players that have a chance of getting in the World Cup squad over the course of the next 12 months. And here you see on the form tracker, you have Dane St. Clair right now as the keeper that is most in form and also as the starter for the opening game of the World Cup. Are you locking him in?
I'm not locking him in. This is the best battle going on at the minute in this squad for the starting role in this first game between St. Clair and Crépeau. And I mean, St. Clair's in better club form, Luke, no doubt about it. Crépeau's really struggled in Portland and it's not went the way that he would have hoped. But
Crepeau is one of the guys that when he wears the national team jersey, you just get more from him, and sometimes that happens. And so, yet again, on Saturday against Ukraine, he was outstanding. So I really feel this is going to go right to the wire. Crepeau is going to get in better club form, either leave Portland or play better in his home at Portland Timbers to push St Clair. But ultimately, I think that this is a close race. There's not a lot between these goalkeepers.
A lot of countries heading into a World Cup, even at this point, will have a very clear number one goalkeeper. It's unusual that there are two players who are vying for that spot and that there is not clarity over who is going to start. Is that an issue?
I don't think so. I mean, it does happen when you've got two great goalkeepers. I think of Brazil with Alisson and Ederson, of course. You know, I think of Belgium with Courtois and Sells. You know, so there is some battles. I think ultimately there is a favourite. It seems like it's St Clair at the minute, but Crepeau's done so well for Canada, and when you're a national team manager, there is a sense of loyalty. You go back and you keep thinking about when I've put him into the most white-hot environments, he's done the job, and he seems to be more confident with the Canadian men's national team. So again, he's got to try and find that same confidence in the home shirt of Portland.
Maxime Crepeau, of course, was a standout for Canada at the Copa America last summer. How much do you think the Gold Cup matters over the course of the next few weeks to either of these goalkeepers?
Well, I think any time you get the start, you got to play well. You have to show that you can still do it. You got to add bits to your game as well. We know what these guys are good at. Now, can they sort of bridge the gap that they might have in certain areas of their game? Can they improve in certain areas of the game? So when I look at the characteristics of both these keepers, Dane St Clair for me, is more technically gifted. He's got the size, but Crepeau is such a warrior. I would never rule him out. He's got a brilliant mentality, not to say Dane hasn't, but Crepeau is going to push St Clair close, but he's just got the edge at the minute.
OK, so on episode 1 of the new series, here is your full squad. The 26 players Jesse Marsch will pick for the World Cup squad next year, and the 11 players who will be starting the opening game in Toronto for Canada. So St Clair in goal, a back four of Johnston, Bombito, Cornelius, Larrea, a midfield of Buchanan, Eustachio, Kone and Davies, and then Jonathan David and Larin up top. The locks, you are certain that Johnston, Bombito, Davies, Eustachio and David will start. Here's Jesse Marsch, who was shown Stevie's list.
Okay, I'm going to show you this list, and please, just if you feel the need, just put a little cross or a tick next to it. Give me your idea. Am I close?
Okay. I mean, this is like our squad for Gold Cup.
So
you just took the Gold Cup squad and put it on here.
So I'm close.
No, yeah. There's a lot of good names on there, but those are good names. I like those names.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
OK, this is on the bubble. Part of Race for the Roster will be looking at who are the players who are closest to dropping out of the 26-man squad and who are the closest players to getting in.
Well, Jemison, let's start with him. Lack of experience, not getting enough game time, looked really rusty and young when we saw him play in recent games there against Ukraine and Cote d'Ivoire. He's on the bubble for me. Liam Miller, we don't know how he's going to come back from injury. 25 years old, though. You'd expect he'll get back in form. He's playing at a high level. Osorio is at the opposite end, where, you know, struggling at club level with TFC. And Knight LaBelle experienced thing as well, Luke.
What about the players that are on the outside right now that could take their places?
Yeah, I mean, people in form. Basson did so well against Ukraine. I think that surprised everybody. He did really excellent in that left-back position, showed that he can be relied upon. So I think it's really moved him up a lot in Jesse Marsch and the coach's mind. Jayden Nelson's in fantastic form. He's playing with a lot of confidence. More end product I want to see from him. Jason Russell-Rowe, I've always liked Russell-Rowe. I think he's a quality striker, but he has to catch fire. He has to score goals week in, week out for the Columbus Crew if he's going to start pushing. A Premier League striker, limited minutes or not, he's in the English Premier League, so it's going to be hard for Russell-Rowe. But Miller's got experience. Kamal Miller as well. We could push Jamie Knight LaBelle, assuming that he doesn't get the minutes that he might want when he goes back to his parent club, Bristol City.
Yes, Kamal Miller was somebody who was relied upon for a long time for this team, but now you've got him on the outside looking in. Yeah,
he's coming back into club form. He had a real dip. Actually, kind of after Qatar, things never went so well for Kamal Miller, but he's someone that I trust. He's someone that I've seen when he's in the best physical shape, when he's mentally ready, he can be an excellent player. He's very good on the ball. His strength is stepping into things. I think he's better in the back three. and I don't see Jesse Marsh going to play a back three. So maybe that's one of the reasons why he's on the outside. But he's got an important year coming up, and he's got to again play above and beyond to push himself in towards this, because we've seen that Jesse Marsh and the squads that he's picked so far, Luke, has been really loyal to a lot of these guys. So I don't see that changing too much unless there's a real dip and drop in form.
Do you think there are any situations here, maybe aside from the goalkeeper decision, that are going to keep Jesse Marsh up over the course of the next year?
I think Ishmael Coney will keep him up. I think he'll be worried about what happens out of his control. I think he's someone that he wants to pick, that he knows at his best as an outstanding sort of generational talent for Canada, but he's got to be at his best, and he has to be reliable. He's got to get the basics of midfield play buttoned down if you want to play in a World Cup squad and you want to play every single game. Where else might he be? The Davis question, I'm sure he's played him a lot left back. Now, it's a controversial one, me saying that he'll end up in that left wing position, but I don't think he's got the best out of him, and I think that's keeping him up at night. To get the best out of his captain, both on and off the field, is something that Jesse Marsh wants to keep trying to establish with Alphonso Davies, who unfortunately is out with that longer term injury at the minute, and then the striker role. We talked about that loads. Who will partner Jonathan David? For me, it'll be someone specific to the type of opponent they're playing, because they are so different, the four strikers who are vying for that one other spot.
If you do disagree with anything that Stevie has said, any of the players that are in or out, please do let him know. Please do, because that will make me happy. But every Monday between now and Jesse Marsh naming the roster for the World Cup, we will have a new episode of Race for the Roster across TSN platforms, so you can see if Stevie is sticking with what he's got, if he's down on anybody, if he's decided to move anybody into the starting 11 or lock them in. It's all to come over the course of the next 52 weeks as we continue on the road to the World Cup.